Hello folks, welcome to a new week of lore. Today we are covering the Blood Angels. If you like what I do, the subscribe box is down below. If you really like what I do, then the bell notification icon is next to that. If you don't click that, you'll never hear from me again because YouTube doesn't really push anybody. And beyond that, if you like what I do, the Patreon is down below. If you want access to all of these videos a day early at least, then head on down to the Patreon and buy me a beer or something, and you'll get access to all of the videos early. And you get to speak to me in the comment sections of those videos if you have anything to say to me personally, which I will take to heart because I'm one of those guys. Let's get on with it, shall we? 40k lore, the Blood Angels. Let's jump in. So, this one is going to generate a lot of controversy, let's be honest. The Blood Angels are some of the most beloved of the Space Marine chapters, and not just that, they're one of the most beloved factions in 40k in general. Most of the old guard that I know of, those who were around for things like Rogue Trader for instance, all collected Blood Angels at some point. They were the first real poster boys of the hobby beyond the Ultramarines, and of course, the other cover boys of the original sections of Warhammer, like the Crimson Fists, which at the time did not even have a name. For a long period in Warhammer 40,000, Blood Angels were the Space Marine army. It may not seem that way today, as Games Workshop have graduated, in it seems, from red to blue in more ways than one. But the Blood Angels are one of the people that I like to call the three pillars of foundational 40k back in the day. The other two being John Blanche and Goblin Green paint for bases. Let's start with the good, shall we? The good should be kind of obvious. Tragic heroes. Sanguinius, and all of the above. The Blood Angels are Space Marines that stand for the epitome of the self-sacrificial ideal that the Imperium subscribe towards, especially the Astartes, okay? They're essentially what the Astartes are supposed to be. Their aesthetic draws this in fantastically, and to be honest, I look at characters like Sanguinius and Dante and immediately cannot help but feel that certain Blood Angels writers back in the day were fans of things like Castlevania. Even the names of certain weapons, the Spear of Telesto, as an example, have Renaissance-era Italian and Latin Mediterranean names and undertones that call back to the golden age of tragedy within human history. No legion or chapter is that entwined with the tragedy of Shakespeare and the era that came after him than the Blood Angels. They even sport masks that are heavily reminiscent of stage performers of their time. They're also like Grecian masks as well, so like from ancient Greece they would also wear these types of masks that the the Blood Angels use. Anyway, there is an innate sadness to the Blood Angels that is fully wrapped up in the figure of Sanguinius himself, a Primarch who knows the apparent date and time of his death a few years before it actually occurs, but follows the path to it anyway without complaint. He knows it is his destiny to buy the Emperor time to win the Horus Heresy, and he plays his role to a T. Again, playing his role, going back towards the artistic values and the tragedy of the Blood Angels, right? We see through the Horus Heresy books that Sanguinius is far more conflicted over this than the ecclesiarchy of the modern Imperium would later have us believe. But the stoic nature with which he walks his path to destruction is indicative of the soul of the Blood Angels. They know they're damned, but they do it anyway, as true tragic heroes. When there is such a synergy between a Primarch and their legion, it produces a legion with fantastic ludonarrative harmony. Legions like the Night Lords also, for all of their faults, have a great sense of interlocking lore because of this. I think the Blood Angels are the best example of a legion being an offshoot of their Primarch in all things. In modern 40k, the Blood Angels have fallen into the meme trap that Games Workshop loves so much, but we will get into that later. The tragedy of the Blood Angels is still embraced though, however, in characters like Commander Dante, who simply is so old that he wants to die. He's had enough, he wants to pass away. We have the more savage side of the Blood Angels in their supporting cast, like the Flesh Tearers of Gabriel Seth and others. All add to the tapestry of the Blood Angels. And that is before we even talk about the Red Thirst, Black Rage, and how they define this faction in both positive and negative ways. As a positive, the flaws of the Blood Angels gene seed gives them much more needed bite and edge, no pun intended. It gives a darker tie to their nature and their suffering that makes their sacrifices all the more tragic. The scene where Sanguinius in the Horus Heresy is forced to euthanize a Blood Angel and is caught in the act by a pre-corruption Horus is a perfect scene encapsulating the madness that lies at the heart of the Legion of the Blood Angels and the core of their self-persecution, and how much of an absolute bro Horus was at the same time. I firmly believe that Horus could have used the Black Rage and Red Thirst against the Blood Angels in a far more direct way in his civil war, but chose not to, hoping in vain that the most beloved brother of his would come over to his way of thinking eventually. Of course, Sanguinius didn't, and that led to the ultimate tragedy of Horus killing Sanguinius. The Red Thirst is the flaw that can run one of two ways. The first lending a sense of barely controlled anger to these paragons of protection that the Blood Angels represent. It drives some mad, and the light that burns twice as bright burns twice as quickly. The Blood Angels are the epitome of this. The more they use their powers, the more they fight to protect others, the more their flaw asserts itself until they lose who they are. That is tragedy, and it is extremely elegant lore writing on Games Workshop's part. Yes, I am giving Games Workshop some props here, which is, you know, not something that I do on often, but there you go. You got to give the devil his due. The Black Rage, born really of the loss of Sanguinius, is a direct link back to this most traumatic of events for the Blood Angels, and forges a constant reminder to their tragic past. It takes the more maddening forms of the Red Thirst and turns them up to 11, with the Marine in question actively believing they are Sanguinius fighting Horus. Such were the psychic imprints of that memory on the Blood Angels. It is a flaw that denotes the tragic loss of potential that the Blood Angels represent, but also their need and phoenix-like way to bounce back. The miracle of this is given a larger shadow by the Black Rage. So those are all the good things I think exist about the Blood Angels. Let's get into the bad, shall we? Alright, I guess it's time to talk about it. Vampires. Trust Games Workshop to not be able to help themselves. They simply couldn't, could they? Gifted a tragic legion of heroes, they are turned, in Warhammer 40,000's constant meme machine, into space vampires. Every time I see a Blood Angel with elongated fangs and vampire cloak, I sigh. I hate Mephiston with a passion for this very reason. He is the absolute primogenia of this mode of thinking. The exemplar of Blood Angel vampire cringe. I do not care what he does in the lore. What he looks like is a discount Dracula on steroids. This is the problem with wider 40k as a medium. The constant boiling down of its factions into the mindless sludge for smooth-brained hobbyists to shout Brother Alpha Boozer quotes obnoxiously at you over the table in the hobby store whilst you are trying to roll dice. I love text-to-speech, by the way, but that does not mean I won't call it out for some of its more negative influence on the idiots who think memes are lore and canon. Newsflash, they're not. These people will literally chase you around the store, shouting quotes from the show like they wrote it themselves. So clever. So deep. This is what the Blood Angels are in modern 40k. Moderately tragic space vampires who literally become space marines in coffins. Yes, that is right. They are locked in coffins to transform into space marines. Don't ask me how that works, but this is the standard of writing we are working with at GW these days. It's beyond cringe and bastardizes one of 40k's original top-tier factions into this thinly veiled Twilight joke. They could not even leave the tragedy of the Blood Angels alone. No. The Lamenters are some of the most ridiculously over-the-top because reasons writing I have come across in this hobby. Their constant run-ins with tragedy and loss become so overbearing that it actively starts eye-rolling the audience. Yes, we get it, Games Workshop. The Blood Angels are tragic heroes. We get it. Stop memifying it. We understand. that does not mean you can bend and break the rules of logic to just meme the absolute shit out of a Space Marine chapter for a giggle. If your setting has no rules, Games Workshop, why the fuck should I care? You are starting to blend into Larian Entertainment territory. Larian Entertainment, for those of you who don't know, they write and they make the Divinity Original Sin games. And to a more of an extent, Baldur's Gate 3, which still hasn't come out because, you know, they can't be bothered releasing it. So, here's my problem with Larian's world building, right? They have all of these characters and people. They have walking, talking skeletons. They have lizard men. They have all of these whimsical things going on in their world that has no apparent rules. If they think something is cool, they'll just put it in, like a talking cat or a talking chicken, because why the fuck not? But here's the thing, Larian, if you don't have respect for your own setting to have certain rules in place about what is possible and what isn't, I don't respect it, because why should I? Because you clearly don't. You don't respect your own setting, why should I? And that's the trap that Games Workshop fall into with things like the Blood Angels. How does a Blood Angel become a Space Marine? He is given a drop of Sanguinius's blood and is put into a coffin. That's it. That's it. We hear no mention of their implants. We have no mention of the scientific method from which an Astartes is born. Instead, he is just put in a coffin. And he becomes a Blood Angel. How? Who knows? Hand wave it. Just hand wave it away. That is Larian Entertainment 101. That is what Games Workshop are falling into with their current lore on the Blood Angels. It's shit, it's boring, and it just hand waves away explanations that should be given to the audience in time. Lastly, goes into my last point, the Blood Angels as a chapter are not very well explained in modern 40k. That's just how it is. What I mean by this is characters like the Sanguinor and Astarath the Grim are given the barest of explanations into how their powers actually work. This leads to me checking out mentally on reading more about the Blood Angels. I don't care, because you don't explain anything. This should never be the case. Show us why these characters are awesome and how they get their powers. Don't just tell us they're cool and handwave any explanation to how they use their powers away, or how they received them in the first place, right? Show us why they're cool, don't tell us and tell us to get on with it. Bollocks. Alright, so, all very well and good, but how would I change them? So first things first, the Blood Angels of the Horus Heresy era are fine, as far as I'm concerned. The only thing I would change is that Horus is actively pissed off that Khorne is trying to use the flaw of the Blood Angels against them. As one of the conditions for him accepting their power of the Chaos Gods was to not break the Blood Angels, but to let Horus win them to his side. So essentially, when he's being tempted over to Chaos, he says, fine, I'll accept your powers, but what are my conditions? The Blood Angels, I'll handle that. That's my bro. He's my brother, right? I'll handle him. He'll come over to my side, and if he doesn't, leave him alone, right? Leave him alone. I will sort that out. He fails in this, and Khorne then starts to take stabs at the Red Thirst and Blood Rage and Black Rage tendencies of the Blood Angels of his own accord because Horus has failed to win them to his side, right? This shows yet more tragedy and the fact that Horus and Sanguinius are the two closest brothers of the Primarchs, leading into the themes of the Blood Angels quite heavily, their tragedy and their brotherhood, right? Now, for Warhammer 40,000, here's how I would change them. We lose the vampire aesthetic entirely. Not like the Space Wolves, where we still kind of have it there, but it's not there. No. We lose the vampire aesthetic entirely. Entirely. It's gone. It's gone. We don't have it anymore. The Blood Angels should look like a representation of Michelangelo's David in power armor. Not a Walmart Halloween vampire. Instead, they take on a gilded armor approach. Ornate and austere. Almost like statues. Ageless, right? Beautiful Space Marines. I would also have the Blood Angels suffer from the Black Rage in a more overt way. In a word, it happens more often and means the Blood Angels typically only live for a few decades as a full Marine before having to be put down. This also leads to their characters being largely built around their apothecaries. I'll get into that in a second. But again, the flame that burns twice as bright should burn for twice as short amount of time, you know what I mean? So the Blood Angels, I would actually go out and say, the Blood Angels, as a chapter, are more powerful than other Space Marines. There, I said it. The problem is, they only live for about 20 years before they collapse in on themselves, suffering from the Black Rage. They are a dying chapter, and that is why a lot of their characters in my setting are largely built around apothecaries and the apothecarion, right? Astrath the Grim in this setting is an apothecary of peerless talent who is called the Grim because he has to put down so many of his brothers. Sometimes he manages to save them from the Black Rage. He manages to pull them back. But most of the time, like 7 times out of 10, he's got to put them down. That's why it's called Astrath the Grim, right? And most of the chapter high command are counselors and healers. Yes, they're therapists. Most of the Astartes high command of the Blood Angels are therapists. They talk to their brothers. They bring them back from the brink of the Black Rage. They bring them back to sanity for a short amount of time. Let's celebrate therapists, guys, in our lore. They're awesome. They are able to bring their brothers back from the brink of the Black Rage and Red Thirst to serve for a few more years with their minds barely intact. The Blood Angels of this version of 40k are a dying chapter. Not a dying chapter, quote unquote, that somehow survived the Shield of Baal. No, they are literally a dying chapter. They're on the way out. In fact, they are a chapter with the least amount of successor chapters aside from the Space Wolves. Because why does a dying chapter have dozens of successors? Doesn't make any sense, right? Instead, they are a chapter of around 4,000 to 5,000 strong Marines, ignoring the Codex Astartes for the most part, as they see themselves beyond its reach thanks to the sacrifice of their Primarch. The Blood Angels need these numbers, however, as without at least 2 scout companies, the chapter would die away entirely. Again, we get rid of the coffins and all that bullshit, right? That doesn't happen. Instead, they are fading slowly into the night, but are determined to make a stand in any way that they can. The only 2 successors of the Blood Angels, in terms of chapters, are the Flesh Tearers, where those who are readily falling into the Black Rage and already have a very choleric temperament are sent, and the Crimson Reavers, a new chapter encapsulating the Red Thirst and the tragic tendencies of the Blood Angels, but toned down, of the Lamenters. So essentially, the Lamenters become the Crimson Reavers, right? Those are the 2 successor chapters that we have. You can make your own, no problem. You know, I don't put that beyond you in the lore, but they need to link into the Blood Angels' tragedy somehow. The rest of the Blood Angels lore plays out rather similarly to the Blood Angels in modern 40k, but the Sanguinor simply does not exist at all. Right, so we've explained Astorath. He is now an apothecary, but the Sanguinor does not exist at all. Instead, at the run-up to the Shield of Baal campaign, all the Blood Angels are struck by visions of Sanguinius before their dreams turn to nightmares as the Tyranids invade, just as they do in the modern Shield of Baal campaign. Okay? And here's the controversial bit. I want to know what you think about this. No Ultramarine help arrives in time. Guilliman doesn't turn up in time. Instead, in the final throes of the battle, Dante actually dies. Right? He fades into death, killed by a multitude of Hive Tyrants, or as I would like it, a new model of the Tyranids. Yes, the Tyranids getting new models. Shock horror, right? Called a Paragon. A Paragon Tyranid is essentially the Hive Mind given manifest. Do you know when you fight Cthulhu in Call of Cthulhu, you're not actually fighting Cthulhu, you're fighting a shard of him, an avatar, right? Well, this is an avatar of the Hive Mind. It is literally an entire planet's worth of biomass made into a giant thing that then kills Dante. There we go, right? You're welcome, Tyranid players. I always have love for Xenos factions, even though I have to go over the Space Marines first for marketing reasons. So, Dante is dead. In death, however, he is met by Sanguinius, who offers him a choice: to die now peacefully, or to take his father's hand and fight by his side forever, but never know true peace. Ever. Dante, of course, makes the Blood Angel's decision and takes Sanguinius's hand. Dante is reborn as the Sanguinor. Sanguinius returned. The two souls merge together into a wondrous whole. The body of Dante is burned away to ash as golden light fills his armour, and ethereal wings of this light sprout from his armour like fire. Each Blood Angel just sees their Primarch, standing there with the Spear of Telesto in his hand, just like he did at the Infinity Gate in the Horus Heresy. And Sanguinius leads the defence of Baal Secundus from the Tyranids. When Guilliman arrives, he sees that the Blood Angels have completely lost themselves to the Black Rage under the guidance of the Sanguinor. It was the only way to drive off the Tyranids. So the Paragon Tyranid isn't dead, he's just driven off, like he's thrown into the warp or something, right? We do something like that. After the battle, the Sanguinor exploded in a golden light that left his armour an empty husk. But this explosion brought his sons back from the Black Rage, if only temporarily. It seems to have brought them, a few decades at least, completely free from the Black Rage curse. Slowly, however, the curse starts to build back as the decades tick on, right? A vision is shown to the Blood Angels of, listen, of their father saying, listen, I bought you some time, but the floor is still there. You need to make more Marines. You need to fight in my name. And when you need me again, I'll return. More brothers fall over the coming decades to the Black Rage. Until then again, later on, the Sanguinor emerges from the armour of Dante to lead the Blood Angels again in a glorious final stand, and once again purges the Blood Rage from them for a time, just when the chapter seems on the brink of absolute annihilation. This is a pattern that repeats again and again and again and again. This is said to occur forever, right? That's what the lore hints at. This is going to occur forever. With every few centuries, the Sanguinor returning for a final purge before heading back to the warp. This shows the soul of Sanguinius in the warp with Dante, and it embodies the sense of sacrifice that the Blood Angels must endure. It allows a new character to become Chapter Master of the Blood Angels, and gives Dante the send-off he deserves. It also links together all of the themes of 40k into the wider Blood Angels lore, with the Sanguinor literally being an Imperial demon that acts as a pressure valve for the Blood Angels when they need one most. It saves the chapter, but still curses them. The perfect 40k horrible status quo. What do you guys think? Do you think I'm talking out of my arse? Because I think this actually really preserves what the Blood Angels are, whilst moving them forwards in the lore and stripping all of the cringe stuff away, right? Sanguinius does return, but with an asterisk next to his name. His soul is combined with Dante's, and it comes back every now and again when the Blood Angels are all falling to the Black Rage and are about to be annihilated. That's when he returns and purges the Blood Angels of the Black Rage for a while, whilst winning the battle for them, you know? We can even have the armour of Commander Dante is their most prized chapter relic. It's in their fortress monastery. It's there, ready to be called upon when the time is right, when the time is at most need. Even for the Imperium, you could even rework the lore. Again, what I'm saying here is just an idea. You can jump off on it and take it your own way. Maybe the Sanguinor comes back when the Imperium needs him most. Right? So he comes back, purges the Blood Angels of the Black Rage for a while, and comes back and helps the Imperium. You can have it that way as well. What do you guys think? Do you think I'm mad? Do you think the lore itself is fine as it is? Let me know in the comment section down below. I will be returning tomorrow with some more Hobby Nightmares. I love you a long time. I will speak to you then. Have a lovely day. Have a good one. Bye.